Hello, this is Dr. Dickinson. Let me get our PowerPoint set up. Hello, this is Dr. Dickinson, and welcome to Unit 4, Meaningful Learning. This unit is part of TED 682, which is the Instructional Technology course for our Clear Credential program at National University. I will be presenting this unit. My name is Dr. Patricia Dickinson, and I can be reached at pdickinson@nu.edu. So in Unit 3, we had an opportunity to explore new technology and social media. We discussed the role of social media in student lives. When we think about Vygotsky's work with cultural tools, we can see how technology today is a strong cultural tool for our students, and how that will influence them in terms of communicating, relationships. So as teachers, we really need to be aware of how social media is used and how it influences our students' lives. We had an opportunity to use Google Hangout for our classroom platform discussion. We discussed some of the pros and cons of this tool and how it can be used in multiple ways, such as with parent-teacher conferences, collaborating with your colleagues, having the students interview an expert in the field, or having students work on group projects together using a Google Hangout. We also reviewed upcoming assignments and requirements. Our learning objectives for Unit 4 is to be able to describe how learning takes place, to apply cognitive learning theory to instructional design, and explain how learners learn. We'll also be able to identify what makes a lesson meaningful. So in the context of technology, when we think about what makes technology meaningful, we should ask ourselves, is technology being used to enhance instruction? So is it making instruction a little bit more available for our students? We're using a different modality so that they can access the information. Is it being used to support instruction? So is it something where students are maybe watching a video or seeing a play, or learning from a modality where they're getting another perspective or learning some information in a different way? Technology can also be used to apply instruction. So when you've taught a content area, then a lot of times you'll see project-based learning being used in the medium of technology. So are students creating a Prezi? Are they applying instruction in a Padlet or VoiceThread? Technology can also be used to reinforce instruction. So maybe you've taught multiplication and now you want to reinforce that skill by having students practice playing a game. But technology should not be used to replace instruction. Now remember, as teachers, we're the most important person in the classroom and the most important conveyor of information. So we want to make sure that our role is not mitigated by technology, and that we are shaping what students learn and using technology as another means to get our message across. So I want to look at a classroom context here and ask yourself, does this make instruction meaningful? We see that the teacher is in the front of the room. She looks like she's demonstrating something on a smartboard, but it doesn't seem like the students are all actively engaged. It seems like some students are maybe looking around the classroom, working on different assignments. So even if we're using technology, you always want to make sure that we're engaging students in the technology. Look at this classroom. You see that all the students, are actively engaged. They have a computer. They're working on some type of task, and the students are working in their nice, comfortable chairs, the teacher is going around, giving extra support and monitoring student learning. So here's some questions that can be used to guide technology integration. Are students creating with technology? Are students reinforcing a skill or practicing? Do students have a chance to share ideas and collaborate? Can students apply prior learning to new concepts? And do students have an opportunity to reflect on the process and synthesize what they learned? So all of these questions are really helpful in terms of when you're designing instruction to think about, is this really meaningful? Are they getting an opportunity to take this technology and create something so that they can express what they're learning in their own way? Are they getting an opportunity to use technology to practice a skill that you just taught in the classroom? After they use technology, are they getting a chance to share their ideas, or are they collaborating while they use technology? That makes learning meaningful because we need an opportunity to talk about what we're learning. That'll help synthesize it and build our existing schemas. Again, we want to always make sure that we're activating prior knowledge. We're making it meaningful because we're applying it to what students already know. And then at the end of the lesson, we want to make sure that we're having students reflect on the process, what they did. By doing that, they're going to reinforce the steps, the procedures, the knowledge that they have, and then synthesize what they learned, kind of boil it down, sum it up. And this will help in terms of accessing that information in their long-term memory. So, speaking of long-term memory, when we look at cognitive theory, we often think of the information processing theory. So this is basically, how do students learn? What is the process? What is the procedure? So cognitive theorists believe that we have this sensory register. We're in an environment like classroom setting, and there's so much sensory input that's going on. There's announcements on the PA. There's my neighbor sitting next to me. There's the window and cars moving outside. There's the sound of a little boy tapping his pencil. So there's a lot of sensory going on in the classroom. And we really want to help our students focus so that they can take what we need them to know, what we need them to focus on, and put that in their working memory. So the working memory is also thought of as their short-term memory. And the working memory has about 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information. But if we want to make sure that information is in the working memory, we need to give our students an opportunity to rehearse so that information stays there, so that it's being accessed and being used, so that they're focusing on it. Some successful ways that we can do that in the classroom is we can help our students organize that information. Maybe they are working on a mind map when we're teaching a lesson. Maybe we're giving them some cues to help them retrieve that information. We might also give them a mnemonic, like, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, for order of operations. So all these ideas really help our students in terms of organizing information, thinking about what they're doing, and so they can recall that information. Now, here's our long-term memory. So this is kind of like the end goal. We want to make sure that students get this information, what we're trying to teach, the content knowledge, and store it in their long-term memory, LTM. So we see this is a reciprocal process. The information goes to the long-term memory. And it gets applied from knowledge from the LTM. So that when we think about knowledge from LTM, well, that's their existing knowledge. That's why we always say activate their prior knowledge, because we want to build on what they know. We want to apply these ideas into their existing schemas. So you work with young children, they have a schema for things that move, like a car. I remember when I had my little son, he was 2, and every time he learned the word car, he just was able to associate it with things that were moving. And the next thing you know, he would see a bike or a plane, and that would also be a car. And of course, they weren't cars, but he was overgeneralizing. So we see that we understand that students have these schemas, these mind maps, and they build on these mind maps. So we always need to make sure that whatever information we're giving our students, it's information that can be applied to their existing knowledge, and that becomes from their LTM. And then there's that opportunity, once again, to have that elaborative rehearsal. So elaborative being applying it. So we always ask our students, how does this relate to what we learned last week? Or, what do you already know about the concept of weather? And so they're having an opportunity to really rehearse that. Maybe they're tuning to a partner, they're sharing, or they're applying it into another context. When we do that, we help promote transfer of ideas. So we have a concept like addition. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Oh no! And interference can happen when we're teaching a concept and something comes in the way that can distract us or preventing us from learning. So even though we might have the best intention, the best lesson, if other things are coming up in our students' lives, they're going to interfere. So we always want to make sure that, we think of Maslow, the basic needs are being met with our students, and that we're creating a conducive learning environment. And of course, if we have information, we don't give our students time to process it, to use it, then it's going to decay. It's going to be forgotten. So what do we know about the long-term memory? Well, it has an indefinitely long duration, unlimited capacity. Content can be either explicit or implicit. So explicit is, this is the step-by-step procedures I want you to learn. It's very direct. It's very clear. Or implicit is something we want our students to kind of refer to. So we might be thinking about what are the general ideas or themes in a reading comprehension story. There's different types of knowledge. Declarative knowledge. This is what we know about it, kind of like factual. A burger is usually round. It's declarative, or declaring a statement. Procedure is the steps of process. Conceptual is the big ideas. It's the how-to, why it works. And episodic is, the personal experiences. So all these types of knowledge are important for us to really think about, because we want to give a concept or an idea, and we want to make sure that we touch upon it in these different ways. So I always like to start with the conceptual, the big idea, and then move to kind of declarative knowledge and give the students the procedures, and then have them think about it episodically. And again, we can use images, episodes, or their existing schemata to make it meaningful to our students. So we're going to do a little activity here, and you'll need a piece of paper and pencil to think about cognition in motion. What does that mean? That means how we learn information. Again, we just talked about information processing theory, so I'm going to give you some lists of words, and I want you to not write them down right away. I want you to just think about them and try to remember them, and then I'll say write it down, and then you can record it on a sheet. So again, you're not writing till I say write. Here's the list. Write it down. Okay, and your second list. And write it down. Alright, so here's our 2 lists again. Which list did you have a better job, a better job at recalling? Now, I would say for me, the second list, I had an easier time because I was able to make some associations. And again, these are things that I've learned throughout my lifetime about, the FBI and MTV, a music channel, USA, where we live, hello, HBO, another network, and the CIA. So I can also make some connections here too, thinking about the middle 3 as being TV networks, and the top and the bottom as being government agencies. Now, you probably had a lot harder time with the first list because it's hard to make a connection here. So hopefully this exercise will help reinforce the idea that we need to make connections. It needs to be something that is part of everything that we do. Let's try another example. Again, you're going to see a list. You're going to pause, and then I'll say write. You write that list down, and we'll move to the second and third list. Okay, let's get started. Here's your list. write it down. Your second list. Now you can write it down. And your third list. And write it down. So of all the three lists, which list was easier for you to recall? What kind of associations did you make? Were you able to make some personal connections? Do you have a dog? Did your dog run to the top of the stairs and do something nasty? Was you able to put that in the correct sequence? I'd be interested to hear what kind of connections you made with the first list. You might have been able to recall all of the letters there because, again, I said short-term memory is 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information. So you might be able to recall all 7 letters. All right, so I just want to think about with technology, the focus on the Common Core. We are moving in that direction. We know that we need to make sure that our students have 21st century skills so that they can be college and career ready. We're going to use the digital media and technology strategically, and this is what is very explicit in the Common Core. And we want to integrate the technology throughout disciplines. It's very important for our elementary teachers who teach multiple subjects. So we're going to look at what to do in Unit 4. Yes, your discussion boards. Make sure you read and watch all Unit 4 material. Complete the course survey and feedback and get connected to colleagues and instructors on LinkedIn. So let's review our Unit 4 assignments. All right, so we have assignment 4.1. Again, this is your survey and reflection. So you've had an opportunity to do your professional development, Again, part 1 is the data analysis. Think about the big ideas, what surprised you the most. You don't need to go into everything in detail. Okay, 3 or 4 big ideas here. What did you get out of it? What findings surprised you the most? What finding are you most proud of? And now that you've had this, you have the data here, what would you like to do in the future? What would you be likely to change in terms of your presentation? Maybe the presentation was great, but you wish that you had some more classroom examples, or you had more time to take the teachers to the computer lab and really use some of these tools. So it's important as you move into this process to really think about, this was my first presentation, or maybe this wasn't. I need to know about what I can do differently, and that's part of being a good teacher. I'm always reflecting on my practice, and that's why I asked you for feedback. So part 2, again, is the presentation reflection. I want to think about these questions, and each one should be about a paragraph, and that it's a paper presentation reflection. Submit to the Dropbox. Okay, you have your rubric here for the assignment. Again, we're looking at the data analysis and the presentation reflection. Again, you want to make sure that you have some labeled graphs and questions that is detailed, neat, and organized. So you really want to make sure that you're focusing on the evidence here for the data analysis. Whereas the presentation reflection, it should be direct and specific in terms of the presentation and what impact this had on teacher learning and the classroom experience. Okay, so assignment 4.2 is your final reflection for the course. So you want to review the learning goals and outcomes. Okay, we can look at learning goals in each of the units. Here's your learning outcomes. If you just click here, you can see learning outcomes. Did you meet these learning outcomes? Why or why not? What was successful for you? And again, it's a reflection. If you think there's an area that we need to touch more on in the unit, feel free to share that as well. And what are you going to continue to work towards in your plan for future growth? And again, describe how your goals are connected to the California standards for the teaching profession. So we talked about that in our first unit, and you should also look to the Unit 1 Doc Sharing CSTPR report. In part 2, you're going to review your blog post and the assignments. Describe 3 tools that you'd be most likely to implement. It could be something that your colleagues shared. It could be a blog. It could be something from this class or something that you learned while exploring exploring on your own. How is your teaching practice shaped, and how would you implement these tools in your practice? So make sure this is something that's different from your Web 2.0 inventory. Again, this is going to be submitted in the Dropbox. And then for your final assignment, this is connected to your portfolio. It's just a one-page reflection that connects the course content to your induction plan. So that'll be in the Doc Sharing tab here. And make sure that you are submitting this to the Dropbox as well. All right, well, it's been a pleasure to work as your instructor for this course. Again, feel free to email me, call me, connect with me via LinkedIn, Twitter, or another social media platform. And I look forward to reading your final assignments. Thanks again.